Hi music makers, what I want to share with you today in this video is a little bit of inspiration I've been working on. This is the first time I've tried uploading samples to the Novation Circuit. What I was looking for was some sounds that were a bit more organic than a lot of the synthy drum sounds and sample sounds that most of the packs that I've tried sort of ship with. That includes Novation packs as well as some third-party ones. Primarily because I play guitar and wanted some sounds that would fit in a bit better and inspire more sort of creativity to do with the guitar than with sort of synthy noises. But it's surprising how quickly I can generate new ideas using the technique I'm going to show you. If anyone's using an Akai MPC or other beat slicing kind of tools, you will probably find this workflow quite familiar. If you're coming to music creation more from the side of things of starting from synths and like starting from groove boxes like the Novation Circuit, maybe it'll be something new, or maybe you just didn't know you could do this with the Novation Circuit. I think a lot of the time with samplers, it's the limitations of the hardware that cause them to make people feel very creative and come up with lots of ideas. The constraints almost force you to work in a certain way, and that tends to focus you and just produce something which is new. I think for a lot of people, myself included, when we open a software sampler like EXS24 or whatever, there's so much so many menus and so many options, much of which is to do with sort of multi-sampling and very realistic instrument emulation and things like this. It doesn't really create a creative environment that ideas just spring out of. So in that sense, the Novation Circuit, as a sample player rather than a sampler, with only a few parameters, it's interesting. Like, it's certainly not going to replace an MPC in a hip-hop producer's workflow, but at the same time, it's definitely added something for me to play with this. So the sample player features on the Novation Circuit are pretty simple. Basically, you can have 64 samples uploaded, totaling 1 minute duration. There are 4 parameters that you can sort of tweak on each sample, which are essentially like the length of the sample you're going to play from the beginning, the pitch of the sample, but this is not time stretch, this is just like how fast the sample is going to play. There's a distortion and a sort of filter, which can either be like a low pass or a high pass filter. You can obviously apply FX to it the same way as anything on the circuit, so that's reverb and delays. And you can apply a filter to sort of the overall mix, which is quite a nice little analog filter, which again can be low pass or high pass. And that's pretty much it. With the newest firmware update, you're able to record in unquantized mode, which means you can get some closer to some sort of J Dilla-esque sort of beats than you would have been able to before, when everything had to be snapped to the grid. You could still adjust the micro steps, but that is kind of clunky. Okay, so what I'm going to show you is using a computer to import some samples chopped up into the Novation Circuit. Because the circuit's not a sampler, it's only a sample player, it can't record audio itself, so we have to use the laptop to do an upload. There's no getting around that. What I'm going to show you is using Audacity. We can load up a beat. What I've got here is a Nate Smith drum beat that comes from the Loop Loft pack, which is awesome. And basically that is a nicely trimmed 4-bar loop. So what we can do is go into the Analyze menu of Audacity and use this regular interval labels feature. So we select all of the audio, go to regular interval labels, and then we can tell it how many labels we want. So because this is 4 bars, we'll just divide them each into 4 beats. That's 16 labels total. If you use this adjust label interval to fit length, it will ignore this label interval field. It's a bit of a clunky interface, but it works, and we don't worry about the label text. So we click OK. We can see down the bottom here all about labels, and then all we need to do is go File, Export Multiple, and then we can put them into a folder. So here we've got the Microsoft 16-bit wave format, which is what we want. Once we've exported our 16 labelled WAV files, what we need to do is open up components. We click Connect. The circuit should light up in a certain way, and then we're able to drag these WAV files onto each block of the sample chart, and then click Send. And then when we click Send Samples or Send Pack, it will upload those to the circuit. The best way to play these is in sample flip mode. This means you have access to a whole page of drum sounds. You can play them like on the pads with your fingers, and you can just audition them as you go. So I'll play through each of the 16 samples, and it should sound fairly like the original loop. So if you were to sequence those hits at that exact tempo, which I think is 112 beats per minute, you'd actually have that whole 4-bar pattern on repeat. So you could just import that whole thing onto one pad, but where it gets interesting is where we take those samples and play them in a bit more of a creative way. So as usual, when recording on the circuit, you really want to set up a click track using like a hi-hat sound. Once you've done this, I think we want to put it in unquantized record mode. We just press Shift and record, and then when you press Shift, the record button should be dimly rather than brightly lit. And then we just press record, and we can go into sample flip mode and try and record something. So here's one I made earlier. And when you overlay other hits on it, you can add punch. And another one from the same set of samples. So as you can hear, that is using a bit of delay to add essentially a 16th note feel. So hopefully you can see that with a bit of chopping,